People think that there's no racism in America.
Does racism exist?
It has never existed.
Whoa!
I experienced it all through high school, and that was from 2005 to 2009. There was this racist kid, he just yelled. I just couldn't accept it, and so I just started fighting him. In America, every time I come out my house, I feel like I have to look over my shoulder. You could be at the grocery store, you could be at church, you could be on the road. Anybody could get it in America at any given moment. Kids aren't walking around past 6 o'clock. They can either get kidnapped, sex trafficked, killed, just because of being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Vladimir Putin, who revealed that the real Jews were black, historically, it was against the law in Russia to have slaves. He knows the truth. Like, he knows that Africa holds the world's resources. A lot of the stigmas are, there's nothing here in Africa. Don't come. Everyone's living in huts. And I could not convince anyone to come to Africa. I swear, African Americans came from Africa. They don't believe it at all. They don't.
I told him that he should one day come back home to Africa. He's like, don't call me an African.
He probably thinks he's more Chinese. I had a Ghanaian friend. She got murdered. They poisoned her.
Really?
And they left her in the streets. I was like, one day I'll go to Ghana. I just didn't know when. If you want real peace, you gotta start at the root, like a tree. The thing that you're seeking in that American dream, it might be in Africa. Most people spend their life in depression looking at what other people have. You have a place to stay, you have a job. There's people out in the world, they don't have the means, so be grateful.
Hello guys, and welcome back again to another amazing episode, and this is the Diaspora Transition episode where we have dialogue with diasporan who decided to leave the diaspora behind, either being the US, UK, Canada, other even Caribbean countries, and currently transitioning into the continent here in Ghana. And today we have here someone very special. She wants to break the Guinness Book of Records for the longest speech ever for mental health. We do have her on the show. She goes by the name Jerry Bree. She's here in Ghana. She's been here for 1.5 months now. So without further ado, welcome on the show.
Hi everyone, I'm so excited. So first of all, the Guinness World Record attempt is in honor of mental health and global health, but it's following for me having my master's degree in healthcare administration. So with everything going on in the world right now, I was just like, why not? Why not? Like, people in America right now are absolutely losing their minds. Like, if you haven't been in a while, it's been different, since the last 10 years.
What has been different though, based on your own observations?
What has been different? Just everything, like the inflation. Like, inflation is driving people crazy because, I don't know if you know, like the major cities like New York. If you've never been to New York, like, people are sleeping outside. There's more homeless people in New York now. There's more abandoned buildings. Like, we can almost do a tour on just all the abandoned, like, sky rises.
Because they can't afford to live in there?
Not just afford to live, but like, ever since COVID, everyone does work from home. So now for the last 4 years, it's like almost like Gotham City, like New York specifically. But, if you go to other places like Atlanta, Chicago, like, crime rates are high. Just people are mentally
unstable.
I think unstable because the cost of living is so high. Like, you can have a studio apartment for 900 square foot, and it's almost $3,000. Like, wow. USD too.
Wow, and that's causing people to be frustrated.
Yeah, and it's causing people to steal, kill, destroy. They don't care. People are just like, every man for themselves.
And guys, where we are currently filming is called Jendu Place. Jendu Place is a co-working space located in East Legon, Accra. If you're diasporan moving to Ghana, you want somewhere to work remotely, plug and play with internet, constant electricity, Jendu Place is a place for you. And here, you don't have to go out whilst you're working here. They have restaurant.
Food.
And yes, they have the best jollof rice in Accra. Okay, so come check it out. Link in the description. I want people to be able to follow your journey and why it became so relevant for you to, to contest for this, right?
Yeah.
introduce yourself, because you have a lot of accolades. You have 3 degrees.
Yes.
That I want people watching to know of. Introduce yourself in a way that they will get to understand you.
Let me give you my auditory voice. So what's up, everybody? It's your girl Jerry Bree Preach, and I'm here to break the Guinness World Record for longest speech, not just in honor of my master's degree, but my upbringing. I was raised in South Carolina, and then I moved to Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio. And what I was telling Captain Hafer before was that I've been around a lot of people that were depressed, and it leaked into my family. I grew up working since I was 12 years old, and I experienced dealing with, people that were older than me that were either homeless or, really bad on drugs. And I used to live in Cincinnati on one of the streets that was featured on First 48 often. So in the park that was right next to my house was where all the people that were strung out on drugs would live until they revitalized it. And so I grew up watching people their life descend in a bad way. And it happened to my brother. They say that saying where you don't know until it hits home. Well, I invited him to come from South Carolina. My aunts begged me to have him, but he didn't come right away. And then one day he just, he came, and when I picked him up, I was okay, I'm gonna get him a job the same day, make sure he's well taken care of. And I picked him up, and instantly I saw in his eyes that he was just it was almost like a lifeless body. And so I next day after picking him up, I took him, to get a job at one of my clients' restaurants. We were still building out. It was called Bugatti's, which is everyone's favorite famous car, And, it started seeming like he was more in tuned, he was happier because he was a sous chef and he just wanted to get his life back. And he just got involved with the wrong people in my neighborhood, and I would used to yell at him and say, stop bringing these homeless people or these, people that are on drugs to my house, because when you leave here, they know where I live and they are more receptive to coming to break in if they saw something they like. And the last story I gave him before he passed away was this optimism story. I was why are you spending your life looking down at the ground with your head down? You should be looking up at the sky, and seeing the clouds. And the moral behind that was, most people spend their life in depression looking at what other people have instead of enjoying their life, to see you have a place to stay, you have a job, you're not missing any meals. There's people out in the world that just, they don't have it or they don't have the means. So be grateful, instead of walking around, being depressed. And his depression came from, being fatherless, growing up fatherless, needing help, being able to, navigate through the world, but wanting someone to help you, guide you. And so I was if I can save someone's life with my words, I will. And so I want to talk for 108 hours on a lot of global issues, mental health issues, behavioral health issues. So if there's any brands that want to, work with me on developing that, I'm all for the opportunity.
And when is this starting?
June 29th at 3 a.m. Okay, the location will be disclosed soon.
But I want to get to know your upbringing a little bit so that people watching can, understand you. Where did you grow up? You say you grew up with your mom alone. Where was your dad? And stuff like that?
So I actually grew up with my grandmother. So she took majority care of me when I was like in kindergarten, like elementary school. In South Carolina, Florence, South Carolina. And what a lot of people don't know is there's still some, high strung racism that goes on in the South, like South Carolina, Alabama, some parts of Georgia, Tennessee specifically. And I grew up there, small town where everyone typically like, where we used to like drag racing, drag racing, barbecues, just a lot of like community. And when she passed away, it caused a real big disconnect in our family. And I moved to Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio, when I was like 9 years old, and I lived with my mom. So some of that came from my dad being in the Army and him just like not like mentally connecting all the way with people.
What do you mean by that?
Just like from being in like wars in Afghanistan, long-term PTSD, I think he treats everyone like we're like his drill sergeants or something like that. So everyone gets this abrasive tonality, if you would say. And so it caused a lot of pain and strife when we're talking about like abuse. I was like 3 years old one time and I lived in Germany, like because we traveled a lot. And I just remember him having this episode is what I would call him. And it would replay through my mind as I grew up as an adult because it was like one of these random moments where him and my mom was fighting, and we were driving, and he would just put her out the car, and
like push her out,
open the door, and tell her to get out the car. And
while it's moving.
While the car is moving, like he would slow down, but it would be like, just get out, And I would be as a kid unbuckling my seatbelt, saying like, no, like stop. And he would stop a little bit, but then it would just be like, long-term PTSD that carried out, like everyone was against him, and it literally bled out into my family all the way to, my cousins and everything. So from there, like it caused a separation, like a divorce. I think my parents have been divorced for over 20 years now. And I never really got to live with my brother and like all the rest of, like I have a sister too, but I think I lived with my dad for 1 year and I was like, I can't take it. Like I used to get in trouble about everything. Like it would be like a fork in the sink and he would be like, this sink is dirty. Like you didn't clean. And it was very kind of abusive. So then I just went and lived with my mom when I was 9. And we moved to Hebron, and I thought I was moving to another place that would be like, okay, peaceful, but it ended up being that I got involved in sports and, stuff like that. Like I played basketball, I ran track, and but every day before our first bell at 7:30, we would be fighting racism because students, this is like 2005 now, like, so I'm not that young and I'm not that old, but this is 2005 where people were literally every morning, like you have to deal with racism because, I don't know, we were outnumbered. So it was like maybe like 20 to 1 over I would say probably like 20 to 30 black kids in comparison to like over 2,000, 3,000 white kids or Caucasian kids that I went to school with. And I just would be like, we're on the same team. Like, I don't understand why, like after football practice, y'all are fighting, or we're just being casted out. Like, it would be like every morning all the black kids would meet and like, okay, we got to deal with this today. And then you would just see someone like walk past and it's just like you can feel the energy come off of them, and they just would walk up and be disrespectful, and now we're fighting. And I spent my first 3 months of ninth grade in the counselor's office because there was this racist redheaded kid, and he was just like, he just yelled, and then like I just couldn't accept it, and so I just started fighting him. And
Wow.
I'm laughing about it now because I'm over it, but I still experience it, you know, like even running through track, like when I ran track, when I played basketball, you know, we would go to, our team won state 08. So that was my junior year. But man, like we would go to like small towns and small like parts for like the tournaments and stuff, and they would say like we couldn't play for some reason, or they would feel a certain way because there were black kids on the team and we were good, and so we would have to play rough, you know, a little bit. It almost reminds me a little bit of like Flange and Angela Reese, like on the court at LSU, because the kids were just like the enunciators. It would always just be like crazy. And I graduated and I ended up going to University of Cincinnati.
What year did you graduate?
2009. But my senior year, I literally almost slept through school because it was just like so much racism. Like it would be like every day, like, you know how we have our slang and we use it in certain ways. Well, it was like put in my face, and it would be like only one black kid or one black student per class. So we were always outnumbered. We were always, you know, had to like kind of just like brush it off because we would have to deal with that. But that was just the environment. And then when I ended up going and getting like jobs, it would be students from Hebron, Kentucky, just over the bridge. Like you can literally walk over the bridge from Kentucky to Cincinnati, Ohio, and there would be students that would say that they would never go over the bridge because they couldn't stand the like just minority black people over the way. And I'd be like, people think that there's no racism in America and everyone's copacetic, but I experienced it like all through high school, and that was from 2005 to 2009. And then it bled out, you know, even in my adulthood where I would work, you know, and I'd be number one, like in sales and in corporate America, or I would work on national accounts, and it would be like, I would be wearing like Bantu knots, you know, little stuff that would be considered just normal in African American culture. They would always want to touch my hair and just be different. And not that I'm like, I would say I'm biased, but it's you don't understand it until you see like, okay, you work in overtime, mandatory overtime every weekend, and you're dealing with people that are passive aggressive in their way of approaching you. And so I started realizing like, I don't fit in, or this is something that is different. And one time I was just shopping, and you know how you pull the milk carton if you're like reaching in. One time, I think it was like right after the 2020 election with Trump and Biden, and this guy, he just came up to me and he literally just opened up, like he just shoved me right there, and I'm like, this is in Kentucky, like, and so I would just be like, what is going on? Like, why is it so much? But for me, growing up was like a haze because my mom would always be at work. My dad was never around. And so I'm kind of like, I was always like the parent. Like I always had to make sure I got my schoolwork done. I graduated at my top of my class with a master's degree in healthcare administration. I worked, since I was 12 years old. I went to school.
What kind of work were you doing at 12?
I started out in hospitality management, and I ended up as a national account executive for some major accounts.
12 years old?
Well, at 12, I was cleaning houses. And then by the time I turned 14, I think you were able to actually work at that time. Like the working age was like 14 or 15. And I ended up started working at McDonald's. Like McDonald's was my first job, like my first real job. And so I've always had like an entrepreneurial spirit. And then from there, I think by the time I was 17, 18 years old, I had got my first like shift lead experience. And the guy, his name was Bill, and Bill was like, why should I give you this job? And he's an, older Caucasian man. And he was like, why should I give you this job? And I was like, because I want to be a leader. I want to go to school. I'm going to school for this, for management. And I guess I was the best option. So he gave me the shift lead. And so I started working at like Burger King at 4:30 in the morning. And I would go to work at 4:30 in the morning, and I would work with people that were older than me and people that were younger than me. And it just like kind of set the tone for all the rest of the positions for me. So then by the time I was like 22, I was like an operations manager at a major private restaurant. And I had graduated with my bachelor's degree, or at the time it was my associate's for hospitality management. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm already an operations manager. So then it made me pursue other degrees, which got me recruited for positions as like a national account executive. And I'm sure like I was number one like in sales in my region, and I would always be like the chosen black girl, like, or that token black girl that they would say. And it just was always so high strung all the time, like, and I don't know. I've adapted to those environments, but that still doesn't mean I have to deal with it, you know?
So you were in Ohio before Ghana?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so the country, the city where it was Ohio before you moved to Ghana.
Yeah.
Is that so? Okay. Let's just go back a little bit. Was your high school experience any different from your junior high school experience?
Not really.
Not really?
No. I went to school all in Kentucky. So when I finally moved to Ohio, it was almost like it could have been a culture shock, because it was the most black people I had seen in almost 6 or 7 years. Like, I guess you could say the tenure.
Did that do anything to you different? Did that?
I felt like I could potentially, like belong or find some sense of belonging, because from junior high to high school, it was predominantly Caucasian environments. So I just adapted, but then when I would get into those environments with more predominantly black people, they would always say that I talk like I was white. And so I would be like, I cannot win for losing. And so it was just, junior high was, I can't even, I used to run for the high school. I used to run track for the high school because I guess I was that great. But then, moving on to high school, was like, it went from one low grade, okay, we can deal with this, to extreme, like, why is this happening every day? Like, it caused me migraines to the point where, like, all my senior year, I could not focus on anything. Like, I literally slept my senior year because I was in and out of the hospital. Yeah.
But how didn't that affect your grade graduating?
No, I was smart, but it was just like, I just want to do my work at home. Like, I would have my head down every day, calling my mom, like, please come get me. Like, please come get me, because it was just intense. But junior high was a little bit more fun because the kids were younger, and so they weren't more like receptive to like, I guess, diversity. Like, they were just like, oh, we're all kids, you know? And because I didn't get to really waste time, it was like I was either playing a sport, or I was in choir, or I was playing an instrument, I was in the band, or I was a part of like these, you know, programs and things like that. So my days were always rolling. But then when we got to high school, it was like there was some time to kill. Like, okay, you have about 5 minutes before your next class, or you're playing a sport, and now you're getting to experience a little bit more. And I think that a lot of kids in those environments, like when you're a part of those minority settings where you're the minority and you're outnumbered, you grow up with a little bit of a hard shell around you. Like you don't want to experience it again, so you just stay out of those environments where you just don't feel like you belong. And I can't believe that I slept through my senior year. Like, I had so many migraines from, like, just, I guess, trauma, what it would be considered trauma, that I slept. Like, I couldn't do anything, like, because my head was hurting so bad from just every morning, like, having to deal with someone, like, having to come at you a certain way, or they're saying stuff subliminally. And it wasn't all bad. Like, I played with basketball teams, so there was like camaraderie, and like I would play soccer, and there was a sense of camaraderie. But then when we would travel to different environments around Kentucky, it was just like, you're not welcome here.
Wow. How was the after high school, how was university like?
University brought more sense of belonging, but I was different. Like, as soon as I graduated in 2009, I got accepted into this emerging engineers program. So I was already like with the elite intellectual people, and it brought more diversity, but then I still didn't fit in because I was going to school for chemical engineering. So it was, I don't know. It was diverse. Like, you know, University of Cincinnati is a diverse school. But I worked, so it was like school, work, school, work, school, work, and this program. And I lived on campus for like maybe the first year, and then after that, I wanted my own place because the girl that I lived in the room with, she used to like bring her friends over, and they used to be sleeping in my bed when I wasn't there, and I'd be like, y'all just are just disrespectful. Like, imagine you're like you're getting off work, and then you come into your dorm and there's someone sleeping in your bed. like what is going on? You know?
Yeah.
And I would just be like, okay, you know, like, this dorm life is not for me. Like, that's what I would say.
So you had
like,
to rent out of the school?
Oh yeah, like they were like, as a freshman, you're not allowed to have your own place. So I did that year, and then for my sophomore year, I ended up getting my own place. Like, that was kind of off campus, and I tailored away from the chemical engineering program because it just began to be so hard trying to be a chemical engineer and have a full class
Time job,
load
yeah.
and a full-time job. And so I was just like, something has to break. So then I segued into business, and then I mastered business, and I ended up doing some like electoral classes where I met with nurses and doctors, and they were telling me, they were like, how the hospital system worked, and I just wanted to improve it. They were like, the management doesn't listen to the nurses. You know, we do the work, but we don't get paid and treated as like we're the ones that's keeping the operation going. And so I was just like, I want to go to school for a master's of healthcare administration to improve the way that schools, like and the hospitals run. And along with that, I was a kid, because my mom's a nurse, and I would go to like the nursing homes with her, and I would see like the people be crazy in that environment, and I would just be like, what is going on here? Like, why are the nurses, you know, like it would just be like even when I grew up and worked as a consultant in a facility, I would see how the doctors would be with the patients. And I'm like, if you don't love this, get out. Like, if you don't love people, get out. Like, this is not a place for you. But a lot of people get into that field because of the money. And so I was like, where's the balance? Like, some doctors, especially when it comes to minorities, they have a higher load because they want to see, like, patients that look like us want to see people that look like them because they feel safer.
Right.
But
Interesting. So, from the medical field, in Ohio, what were you doing in Ohio for work before moving to Ghana?
before moving to Ghana, well, I have a management service company called Real Time Gains Management. So I work with only small to mid-sized businesses in their business development. And one of the brands I'm actually wearing, Black owned, we just actually finalized a contract with the NFL. And that's what I do. I just do business development and brand development for small to mid-sized businesses. And that's what I would do in Ohio. Like, I would work with, there's a company called Certified Excellence that partnered with the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And we would give back to families that have critical condition kids. I do a lot of nonprofit work. Even though I run a for-profit business, I'm just passionate about what I do. So, like, you know, I would, in Ohio mainly, I would work on these companies' brand development, because a lot of small businesses, they don't get those same opportunities as these larger box retail companies. So I would help develop them, you know, kind of give them like, hey, if you want to be a household name brand, this is what you should do. This is how you want to formulate the way that you are using your systems and your processes. And it takes a lot of tenacity, like, because I came from a very corporate background where I'm used to dealing with 500 work orders a month, and, you know, you have a short time frame to get those work orders in and things like that, to coming and working with small to mid-sized businesses that may not know how to get themselves from point A to point Z, or know how to, you know, do brand partnerships with these large brands. Some businesses didn't even know what pitch decks were, you know? And I'm like, well, I thought everybody knew what a pitch deck was. Or sales, like having departments and things like that. So I help develop small to mid-sized businesses, usually with companies that are less than 10 employees. I do a lot of grant writing. I do a lot of needs analysis, market research, like sales, where you're like, going out and pitching businesses and things like that. So that's what I do.
Wow. So, I mean, one people watching would say, okay, obviously you went through this harsh time in junior high school.
Yeah.
But you obviously had a career, right? What would you say was the wake up, or what triggered that movement to Africa? Like, there must be something that hit you, that made you want to leave America behind, regardless of how much time, how much you've worked in the country creating your career. Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah. I had a Ghanaian friend. She used to do my hair, and in 2017, we were gonna throw our first Afrobeats party in Ohio, and we were scouting locations, and we were, and then something happened to her. She actually got murdered. They poisoned her.
Really?
Yeah, and it was an event in Ohio that would happen yearly, and she went out with some people, I guess, and they left her in the streets, and so I was like, one day I'll go to Ghana. I just didn't know when, but it just kept weighing on me, and I would just be like, I think it really triggered me. That was like that was the first day. I think this happened in 2019, where she had passed away, and her murder was never solved. And so I was just like, I didn't want to be angry, because it could be anybody. They left her in the streets, and then they called the police, and then they went to a party in Columbus, which is like 2 hours away. And so she was a beautiful Ghanaian girl. But then after that, what actually prompted me is I met a jet broker out at an event, and he would always post on his page like, come to Ghana, like, be on a return. So after this is 2019 now, so after this I was just like, I should just go. And I waited, for some time, but then my brother had passed away in 2021. And I was like, what am I doing in America? If there's so much pushback in my life, not everyone experiences, this is not everyone's story, but there is a portion of people that may have gone through this same kind of experience, dealing with living in corporate America, dealing with racism, dealing with passive aggressiveness and stuff. So I was just like, what am I doing here in America if every time I come out my house, I feel like I have to look over my shoulder? I feel like I'm being threatened, or I feel like I'm not getting the opportunities even though I'm qualified. Why? Why am I investing? Why am I giving my energy to this? And so in 2022, I was sitting in my cousin's coffee shop. I was like, I'm going to Africa. And he was like, you're going to go by yourself? And I was like, yeah, I'll meet people there. And I didn't tell anybody. He was the only person I told. I didn't even tell him when I was going or anything. In December, I think maybe like a week or two before Christmas, I was sitting at a party with my friends, and I was not feeling well. I was just feeling depleted. And I was like, I'm booking my flight. And so I booked my flight, and I had a round trip ticket because I was supposed to come back because we were still in our bid with the NFL. And I was just like, I don't want to come back. I didn't want to, because as soon as I got off the plane and came to Ghana, I saw people I knew from the States. It was Dirty December. Everybody was welcoming me. And it was just like my life had changed since then. But it was like a lead up from 2017 to 2022, like I felt like I had lost so much. Like I had lost my Ghanaian friend, I had lost my brother. I felt like I was being outcasted, and I was just like, I don't understand why. Like why does a person have to deal with this? And I just felt like I wanted more peace.
What did you hear about Ghana or Africa that made you feel like, when I come here, I'm going to get exactly what I'm not getting in America?
I just heard that, you know, you will have a little bit more freedom as an African American person. And not just that, but like peace. When people are coming here from America, they're coming for peace. They're coming for a sense of belonging. They're coming to find their roots. And I think that a lot of people, they don't know. Like, there's a lot of African Americans that believe that they're from America, even though it says African American in the title. And I'd be like, no, like let's date it back. Let's actually explore what that really means. And so it's taken me by, surprise, because I've felt like I've met some of my cousins here. Like I've met, like for the first time, like didn't know them before I came here. And, then I just felt like if you want real peace, you gotta start at the root, like a tree. If you're looking at the branches and all the rest of the pieces, how are you ever going to define where you started from? And so it just started getting me into like researching more about my life, dating back, my history, and I've been telling my cousins and, people like that and stuff. I felt like I don't have to carry concealed weapon around to make sure that, because in America, like you could be in the grocery store, you could be at church, you could be on the road. Anybody can get it in America at any given moment, like because people are literally not wired right. Like they're not looking at you like you're their brother or their sister. They're looking at you like you're their opposition. And so, and even in the African American culture, like it's just trailing out. Like there's so many youthful people that are dying, so many people that are losing their minds, chasing money, then you come somewhere where it's like, okay, I can live here comfortably, with, the money that I make. And not everyone here is peaceful, but majority of the people are. Like you don't have to worry about, being somewhere at a school or at your job and getting this pushback or an abrasiveness all the time. And I think that's why a lot of people are coming. Like if you've gotten on TikTok, if you've seen some of the people, they're like, they live in a studio apartment where they pay $3,000 a month and they gotta work 3 jobs and they gotta jump through hoops to, make ends meet just for that one little studio apartment, versus having that same studio apartment for $2,000 or $3,000 here where it's a house. And I'm not saying that that's everywhere, but I just think that come home. But they taught me this, brafier. Brafier.
Yeah. How have your experience been so far? 1 year and 5 months?
Yeah.
How's it been so far for you? What have you learned so far?
I learned that one, I'm a popular loner, I'm noticing, because a lot of people move in units here, or there's this whole family dynamic that is not really displayed in America. Like if you're Ashanti, everyone, they recognize you that way, or Airway, or, any part, like you feel welcomed in any environment. So I feel like that. Like, I feel like you can go somewhere and everyone in the environment knows each other, and they're all considering each other brothers and sisters, versus when you're in America and it's like you walk in and you might spend 5 minutes and you ready to leave. Like you like, I don't think that I should be here. And that's anywhere in America. Like I was telling my trainer, I was like, you can't just be walking around anywhere in New York. Like kids aren't walking around past 6 o'clock in America or when the sun goes down. Like not unless they don't have anywhere to go.
What happened to them in the States?
It's a number of things. We can list it off. Like they can either get kidnapped, sex trafficked, killed, get involved in gangs, and like their life could literally be at the top and they can just spiral down just because of like being at the wrong place at the wrong time in America. And I'm not saying like, oh, don't love America or don't go there and don't go and experience, but I also believe that as African American people, you should come home to Africa and experience life and see for yourself. Kind of a test, because a lot of the stigmas is there's nothing here in Africa. Don't come. Like everyone's living in huts. And I could not convince anyone to come to Africa. Really? I swear. Like I could have told them there's gold, we can go pick it up off of they would not come. They would
What
like
demographic?
Anybody, they're afraid. Like a lot of people, I guess millennials in our age group, they're afraid. They don't want to experience Africa right away. They will go to Dominican Republic, they will go to Mexico, they will go to Tulum, but they don't idolize or envision coming to Africa.
They don't know. They've been lied to.
They don't know. They don't even believe they're African. They believe that their roots started in America, and the conversation that we're having that African Americans came from Africa. They don't believe it at all. They don't. No. You can't convince an African American that is not willing to explore that they are African.
I've had few people, I think when I was in China, I met a guy and I told him he's an African American guy. I told him that he should one day come back home to Africa. He's like, don't call me an African. I'm not an African. He
probably thinks he's more Chinese.
So I'm like, how do you kind of react to it or respond to people who say, oh, obviously I'm black, right? I'm African American, but I'm not from Africa. I am indigenous to the land of America. What do you say to people when they say this?
The real words, you're absolutely like losing your mind if you don't believe you're from Africa. And the reason why I say that, it's either I just blow it off and I'll just feel like you don't have any sense of knowledge of your heritage or your ancestry. Your ancestors had to come from Africa. Like there's what's the 400 years for? What are we fighting for? What are we marching for if you don't believe that you're from Africa? And it's almost scary because it's like dealing with people that are insane. People will believe the same story about them being indigenous and being from America, and that Africans came to America or, whatever. They'll even believe Christopher Columbus, did all the land and stole all the land, but they won't believe that they're from Africa, even though it's as African American. And so my take on it, I'm like, you've been lied to, you're brainwashed, you're still brainwashed. So as soon as someone says that, I just count them as brainwashed and I just move past them. I won't even acknowledge
It's
them.
almost like talking to a mad person.
Yeah, you're talking to someone that's insane, and they're not willing to date their history back. They're not willing. They would go and believe what Ancestry.com says before they go and come to Africa and just check to see if there's any faces that look like theirs or any lineage.
My previous guest on the show said that in the Ghanaian community in New York then, most of the Ghanaians there didn't want to associate with Ghana or Africa. They wanted to be more Jamaican because then Africa was not cool back then. Could it be that these African Americans don't want to admit they are Africans because Africa is not cool, or they don't want to associate themselves, and not necessarily them believing that they are indigenous to America?
Yeah. Jamaica is more accepted in America than Africa is. And, you know, there are a lot of people that I've found that will bleach themselves that because they want to come to America and they believe that if they look a certain way, that will be accepted. Yeah, no, in America, it wasn't cool. Maybe 10 years ago, if you were African, you were made fun of. Mm-hmm. If you were, you know, if you were expressing your heritage in any type of way, you were outcasted. You know, if you were speaking any indigenous languages, you were not welcome. And so now to see, you know, Afro beats and people like Davido and Burna Boy like taking the stand and being at the forefront, and Asake and all these artists like changing the dynamic of what being an African is, more people are now looking into it. And I think that maybe like just like I just told you, so that was about 12 years ago. So in 2009, I graduated. If you were African booty scratcher was like everyone's name that was African. Like it was literally a saying across.
What does it mean though?
I don't know.
Booty scratcher means like you're scratching your or what?
Why are you asking me?
I've heard it a lot, but I don't know what it means.
I don't know. Like I never used it because I always would be like, it's offensive, but that would be like the joke. It would be like, oh, you're an African booty scratcher. If you were dark, like if you were like any darker than me, like you would be considered an African booty scratcher. And I would be like, oh, y'all are just so rude because I find Black beauty, like, but it's the people that like in New York, yeah, if you identify as Jamaican, they will, hey mom, because they associate Jamaica with Bob Marley. They love Bob Marley. But when it comes to like if you start saying like, oh, I'm an Ewe or I'm a Shanti and I'm a king and you associate royalty, it was casted. And even now with Vladimir Putin, who just discovered that, you know, or he just revealed because he always knew that the real Jews were Black or even African, that's probably like, they probably like, and I just saw a TikTok where a girl was saying that she went to like she can't wait to go to Russia because in dating back historically, it was against the law in Russia to have slaves, and so that's why Putin is like working so diligently because he knows the truth. Like he knows that Africa holds the world's resources and nothing in the world would be able to operate without Africa. But in America, because that's a European place and British predominantly driven place, they were able to capitalize off of African Americans and African people not knowing that. And so yeah, if you were in America trying to be an African 10 years ago, you were laughed at, you were made fun of, and you were considered an African booty scratcher.
Yeah, and then while that is happening, most Caucasians, Chinese, and other ethnicities knew that Africa is the future and came 20 years ago, 30 years ago, set up businesses here. Yeah. And then while the propaganda was, you know, spinning in America that you don't have to associate yourself with Africa as a Black person, they are buying up the lands and stuff like that and building, you know, a land that belongs to you. Yeah. But you don't want to associate with the land. Let's speak on that a little bit and why our people are always late to the party to embrace what belongs to them.
You know, I think that we're always late to the party because we will associate wealth with European culture, even though the European culture just capitalized off of us for their wealth.
A lot of the wealth are associated with Caucasians and white folks.
Yeah. We associate wealth with the European culture, even though European culture capitalized off of our wealth. You know, minority people, whether you were Asian, Chinese, Black, Jamaican, you know, African, we built America. And then what they said was, here's your pennies. We allowed you to stay here. We might give you your 40 acres and a mule, maybe, or we may not. It just depends. And so we're always late to the party because we don't believe we're associated with wealth. We're not demanding anything. And people like me that come in the room, like, you're going to give me what I want, or I'm going to ask for it at least. And if you say no, that's fine. But I think that sometimes we're afraid. Like, we're afraid to ask for what we deserve. And then the way that we go about it is that, okay, we're going to march today. We're going to have a peaceful march to see if they're going to give us what we want. That's not how it goes. like, okay, you're standing outside. They brought security. Everyone's armed, and they're like, you better go home peacefully after you're done marching and go to work. But if we come together in unison and say, hey, listen, like, this is what we want. This is how we're gonna decide to move. But we can't collectively agree about anything. And so we're always late to the party because we're worried about the wrong things and not worried about what we should be worried about. Like, you know, like you said, 20 years ago, while the propaganda was, you know, saying don't go to Africa, the Japanese and the Russians and all those people, they were out there picking all the gold off the Gold Coast and selling it into the European markets. So it's time. It really is time for people to wake up. Like, and that's another part of what I will be talking about in the Guinness World Record is economics and like the real raw juice of what people need to know. Like, you need to wake up, you need to look around, stop worried about what Cardi B is doing and Lil Kim. Like, we love them too, but they're not pushing the influences like a 19 Keys or, you know, the EYL brothers, and the people that are like talking about the real issues and coming and they're checking and seeing for themselves. But the people or the small group of us that were how can I say it, like, willing to research and willing to like dig a little bit deeper and not just be shallow, we're going to be the ones that are going to be at the forefront of a movement. And we are, you know, you've seen so many people. Ja Rule just last week, he's building a school, you know, he's developing, he's cultivating, and you got to think, you know, people like Michael Blackson and people like PJ Kev, who, you know, is pushing the Beyond the Return in America. He's telling everybody, he's putting it on his platforms. The Kai Cenats that are like, okay, I'm not just gonna watch anymore, I'm gonna come and actually execute and do this. And he's using his platform to influence. And so I think that the more of us that are using our platform to influence in a positive way, to show light, there will be some wake-up calls, but then there's always going to be a percentage of people that believe that we were paid. Someone paid me to come here. And I'm like, no, I'm telling you right now, no one paid me to come here. I came unwillingly, and I'm frolicking around this place. Enjoy.
Yeah, let's. Do you think? I mean, it's been 1.5, but would you say it's been worth it so far for you?
Yeah, I think that when I left America, I could show you a picture. I looked like I was drained. And for the first month, I was like afraid. I was like, I don't know what I'm getting myself into. And I've been to a number of countries as a kid, just traveling, you know, and I've never been afraid to be anywhere. And so then eventually I was just like, what is there to be afraid of? These people everyone is just, we're all the same. And then I enjoyed my welcoming. It was like I ended up meeting Chance the Rapper and Vic Mensa for the Black Star Line Festival, and it was good to see Erykah Badu and Jeremiah and, you know, more African Americans that have came over the years. But those people are like in the Gen X. They're a little bit older, so they know. And I've been running into people that have been here for about 20 years, and they're like, oh, they will never go back to America. And so I'm like, go God. So y'all are making me understand more. So I feel like as I continue to understand more and I continue to do my research and dive into more resources, I'm like, Africa has everything you need. You know, the thing that you're seeking in that American dream, it might be in Africa. You know, like, because they do tell you like, oh, the American dream, you know, go to school, get a job, have a family, do all of that stuff. Yeah, but you'll work till you die there. Like you'll be 72 years old and still having to work at Walmart. Like, and that's happened to a majority of people because they haven't wanted to take a chance on doing something different. And I think that as a young millennial, I was willing to take a chance to do something different, and it might have saved my life. Like,
give 3 best advices to people watching who want to, you know, embark on a journey to Ghana, Africa.
Some of the best advice is to never have expectations. Some people come and they may have a list of things like the road's got to be perfect, you know, where I stay and how will I make money. So don't have any expectations. To, like, if you have faith in God, have faith in yourself. If you are on a journey, there's a poem, it's like the Footsteps poem. Read that, go Google it, and believe in that if you're walking somewhere and you're on a journey, God is with you. But that's to people that have faith. You know, people that may not, you know, believe or not there yet. The third one is don't be afraid to jump. You know, don't be afraid to be different. You know, when I came here, I had told my mom 4 years before, I was like, let's go to Africa. And she said I was crazy. And I was like, she said, what is it there that you want to see? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what to expect, but I want to go. And she said, well, you go. And I was like, and I told her, I was like, by 2024, you're going to want to be in Africa. Like, because I had did research yeah. And I had just graduated, and she was just like, yeah, you're crazy. She was like, well, go and find out and you let us know how it goes. And I was just like, okay, like I was like, when I say debate me down, like 2 hours, we argued about this, and she would say, what is it that you want to go and see there? She's like, oh, well, while you're over there living in Africa, I'm going to be eating my fruit and all of this stuff and going to Kroger, and, you know, I'm going to have everything. I'm like, they have stuff there too. Like, what do you think? Everyone's living in huts, and I don't know what you think, but I'm going to go and find out. And so now being here for a year and a half, don't be afraid to be viewed as crazy. Don't be afraid to step out and take a chance, because in the event that, like, if she would have known, you know, 5 years ago, all the stuff that was gonna be happening in America right now, I bet she would have been on the first flight. She would have been like, yep, let's go. But people are all there. They want a safety net. That's what it is. People in life, and the reason why people won't leave their job, the reason why people won't do anything different is because it's not what they're used to. They need a safety net. They believe they got to have $1 million before they invest into something. They believe that they can't, take a risk. They're not willing to take a risk on anything that doesn't fit into what society says is what they should have.
Did you bring $1 million?
I have not brought $1 million to Africa. Actually, that's a funny story too. When I came to Africa, my flight was $1,500, one way, and I had a bookmarked ticket to come back for January 4th, and I think I had less than $5,000, less than that, probably like $2,000, and I was like, if I'm really who I say I am, I will make the best of it, and I will make it happen, and I did. Since I've been here, I've accrued some wealth.
But someone will ask though, even though you made that brave move, how do you sustain yourself? Because it's not magic, right?
No.
So yeah.
Well, if you are a good networker, you network, you build your book of business. It just depends on what you're into. Like if you're a trade worker, find jobs in a trade. If you're an account manager, or if you're an entrepreneur, find a product or a service that you can provide. I'm a Jill, so I can pretty much fall in anywhere. Like I could do hair, I can host, I can build pitch decks, I can, I have a lot of things that I've amassed as trades or skills that I can do. So know what you're good at and hone in on that. Some people, they may come here with $10,000, $20,000. They might come with 50. They might come with 100,000. Of course, I had some other accrued wealth that was in a 401k that I don't want to touch. But when we talk about cash, I didn't come here with a lot of cash, and so I think that some people, they need to understand that if you're as good as you say you are at what you do, you need to capitalize on that. You need to take your skills to the next level, so that you're not lessening your money, you're always multiplying. And I have clients back in America and brands that I work with, one being Black owned, and Black owned's whole mission is to empower Black people in Black ownership. So what we do collectively is build a Black community in Cincinnati, Ohio. And, some of the things that are monumental and historic is being a Black owned brand that's tied to the NFL, like the Cincinnati Bengals. How many Black brands, have worked with the NFL or the MLS? That's a rarity in itself. And to be able to maintain it too for a few years. So it's a blessing, but it's also one of those things where people are always probing. People want to know what that means. People want to know what the initiative is and, why you're doing that. Since I've been here, they busted the window out to the, business because, you're always going to have opposing people when you're doing something. But if you're really good at what you do and you are a resourceful person, you'll thrive anywhere in the world. It doesn't, whether you're in Thailand, China, Japan, money is just a tool. You take that tool and you multiply it and you transform it and you develop it and you invest it.
What is the future of Black owned? Where do you see Black owned in the next 10 to 50 years?
I would say if it could be on the S&P 500, but that's far-fetched. But I think in the next 10 to 15 years, I believe that it would be more globally recognized. Right now, nationally recognized, and we did features at BET. We worked with the MLS on a project with FCC Cincinnati, but those are national brands, but the brand Black owned isn't, where the MLS is or where the NFL is. And I think that if we continue to grow it and we continue to put time in it like we are doing, it can be a global brand. It could be, something that is empowering more Black people to build on something. And I think that that's what is needed. Because a lot of times people believe like, oh, they can't get into a corporate brand, or they can't do a partnership with a corporate brand. If they see a Black brand doing it, they will believe that it could be done. They will have faith in it, that it can be done. So I believe that in 10 to 15 years, we'll have more global partnerships. Maybe we can segue to NFL Africa with some designs. I'm not sure. I never like to countify the next step. I like to just take calculated risk.
Let me play devil's advocate a little bit, right? We say everything is white on now, and that is racist or economically at a disadvantage to our people, right?
Yeah.
And now we want to do everything Black owned now. We want Black people to have more businesses. Is it not going to be the same way as the white business has been now in the future?
I think that we are moving in a time where we're reclaiming the throne, okay? There was Black Wall Street before they tore it down. There was Black ownership, because if you date back in history, there's so many Black inventors that never got the recognition that they did, because majority of the people that amassed the wealth were the European people. So if someone was Black and they invented something, they didn't have the capital. But if we start building community and we start developing our wealth again, then we will not necessarily say, hey, no, it can't be white owned. It's no, we share the same amount of wealth. Right now in the world, how can I put this in the best way? We're behind in everything. We're behind in every industry, automotive, transportation. When you walk into those rooms, like if you go to a transportation trade show, when you look around, what do you see? It's 95% of those people are Caucasian, and only 5% of Black or minorities show up to the table. We're not even showing up to the table because we're not invited. But if we're doing our research, then we can make that 95% 25%. Then, okay, it's not going to happen in 10 years maybe, where it's going to end up being 50-50, but that's the goal. We want 50-50. We want reparations. Okay, well, how are you going to get reparations if you don't know any of your state senators and your state representatives and who's making and calling the shots? Or if you're not in those seats yourself. So instead of it being 95% of the people are Caucasian, and if only 5% of those make up in those industries, it needs to be 50-50, so that people feel, or our people feel like we're equal or the same. We can never feel like we're the same if we only make up 3% or 5% or 10% of wealth or of any industry. Like, people just started talking about financials, 5-10 years ago? Like, financials wasn't a thing that was talked about in a lot of African American homes. And so when you come to Africa and you see that everyone owns their home, then what does that say to African Americans? It's like, okay, well, we come from a background where wealth wasn't talked about. So how can we ever believe that we deserve it if we never even talked about it? We were taught to go to school, go to work, get a good job, have a family, you know, and that's it. But no one ever said ownership. No one ever said good credit. No one ever said develop a product. No one ever said be an inventor, you know, own something. And so I think that the playing field needs to come to where it's more like a 50-50. I'm not saying it can't be white owned, but it's been white owned for 400 years. So it's okay if black owned can be we can have something. Yeah. That's just my opinion. Yeah. And I think that the revolution won't be televised, but there are going to be some people that are not going to be afraid to speak up and take the forefront. But I'm not saying that it has to be the same. Like, okay, like there will be white slaves. I don't think that black people even really have it in them like that to be that way, because we want love. All we want to do is feel equal.
I like that. If you do have one thing to change about, you know, Africa or even the world, I mean, from where you came from, what would that be?
The power dynamics. Everyone believes that, well, what it is if you have money, you have power. Just because you have money, that doesn't mean that you should be in power. But if you can buy your way there, then sure. But what the people need to understand is we have the level of influence. Even if you only have $1, if you had 100 friends, you're well off, or you're better off if you had unity than if you were able to buy yourself. Because once you create something and you have, let's just say your Webnation has 50,000 people behind it, and you're the one that is calling the shots, right? You have the power, right? Because now you have 50,000 people that are behind you with the level of influence. Even if you didn't have $50 million, social currency is the thing. And I don't think that we utilize it the best that we can. So I would say understand that if you want change, understand that people are the level of influence.
I like that. If you do have a final message to the people watching, what would that message be?
Come to Ghana, come to Africa, brafie. They taught me this, brafie. Yeah, come home. And watch me break the Guinness World Record for longest speech. I'll probably be talking about a lot of this here on that attempt, June 29th. And follow me at JerryBree_preach.
I like that. Thank you so much for sharing your story on the platform with my audience.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So guys, if it's your first time here, watching this for the first time, please don't forget to like the video, share to friends and family, subscribe, turn on the post notifications. This has been a great conversation with you, sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me on your platform, because I think the message needs to start getting out.
Yeah. Make sure you go check her out. Also, go support her for the Guinness
World Record. June 29th, I will be breaking the record, 108 hours. You can follow me on my social media platform at JerryBree_preach. Abantin.
Abantin means outside. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. So without further ado, let's say bye-bye to the people watching. All right.
See y'all.